throughout the years, these uh, what's the word, mutations, they manifest in different ways. I believe. I think that's why we have not only in the Bible but throughout the world these legends about these giants. I think it manifested in giganticism sometimes. I think the elongated skulls that we see is another one of those random mutations from the fallen angel DNA, the serpent seed. Uh, we get to looking at hairy men like Esau, how I talked about. Even science recognizes this. They call it hypertrichosis. And they even admit that it's a malfunction in the DNA. And I did not know this till I got to looking into the research for my book, was we are all covered in hair in the womb. And they call it Logano hair, I believe is how it's pronounced. But at a certain point in the third trimester, your DNA tells your body to shed this hair. And then you come out, looking normal. But in these cases where you hear about the wolf man, or even the Sasquatch or the wild men, the woodwose, in your neck of the woods, is these people that had a genetic malfunction and was born covered in hair from head to toe like Esau was. And it's just, it's wild to look at because, once again, all those things that I mentioned are worldwide. It doesn't matter what culture you go to, what continent, language, people group, they all have similar stories. The names may be a little different, but it's just wild to see. And when I got to looking through Esau, that was honestly so mind blowing for me because I grew up in church my whole life and never heard of this stuff. And so when I got to looking through him, he come out, covered in hair. It's a Polaroid picture of Genesis 3:15 in the seed war. Then when I got to looking through the extra biblical books, it just says flat out that uh, Michael was the guardian angel of Jacob, but Esau had a guardian angel, and his guardian angel was Samael. And according to the Jewish legends and texts, this is the name of Satan before the fall, and he was known as the angel of death, the viper of God. And it says that he even came out with a serpent's branding, and that while his mother was pregnant, that when she would walk by a house that was devoted to Yahweh, the worship of Yahweh, that Jacob would stir with excitement. But when she would walk by a house in service to a pagan deity, that Esau would stir with excitement. And that she was in such travail that she asked around to the other women, is this normal? Did you guys have this same kind of pain and complications during your pregnancy? And they all told her no. But there was one that they had heard of that had similar pregnancies, and it was Nimrod's mother. And once I got into the book of Jasher, it says that, and of course, let me back up, the trading of the birthright, that is like the most famous thing that Esau's known for. And that's why I have it depicted on the front of my book, too. I have this hairy looking wild man walking away with a bow on his back, and then the bowl of red stew underneath him, and he's walking away from it. But as a kid, that never made sense to me. I was like, modern context, your father's Donald Trump. You're the eldest son. You're about to inherit billions of dollars, the company business, the real estate. I mean, the keys to the kingdom are yours. And you come in from trading stocks all day, and your younger brother's sitting on the couch eating a bag of Doritos, and you're like, oh man, I'm hungry. Could I get some of those Doritos? And he's like, yeah, sure. Just sign over the company and everything you're going to inherit, and they're yours. Oh, yeah, sure. And even Esau says, what use is a birthright to me when I am dead? Take it. I was like, that makes absolutely no sense to me. There's something that we're missing here. And even his name, he was known as the mighty hunter, Esau. If this man was hungry, he could have went and got a lion and had lion steak for supper. This mighty hunter wasn't starving, I don't think. But the text just says that he comes in from the field exhausted. But when you go into the book of Jasher, it says that Nimrod, his name was also the mighty hunter, the Gibborim. It says that he built up hatred and envy and jealousy against Esau all of his days. And so it's kind of like the Highlander. There can only be one, baby. So they was going to show each other who the real mighty man was. And it words it like Nimrod is going out and hunting for this hairy beast of a man named Esau. And he takes a hunting party with him. And so they split off. One party goes one way, and him and two other Gibborim, the same word used time and time again to describe the Nephilim giants in the Bible, and go off looking for Esau. But it says that Esau spots them, and he hides himself. And that at the opportune time, he jumps out, and he cuts off the head of Nimrod, and then fights the other two Gibborim to the death. And it says that once he kills him, the hunting party that broke off heard the commotion and come running, but he takes the time to remove Nimrod's garments. And it says these garments were the reason that Nimrod was a Gibborim, why he was able to prevail over all the nations. And it says that he runs home, hides those garments in his tent, and then he enters the tent of his brother Jacob, where he's preparing red stew. So it dovetails perfectly into the book of Genesis. Yeah, he come in from the field exhausted, all right. He just killed Nimrod, the king, and two other giants. So modern context, you just killed the president, and the feds are after you. You're on the run. He probably sustained some life-threatening injuries during this exchange, and he was desperate, and that's why he traded it. I think the red stew is allegorical for give me sustenance, sew me up, hide me. And if you take that viewpoint, how Esau responds makes perfect sense now. When he says, yeah, sure, I'll help you, but you're going to trade me the birthright. He says, what use is a birthright to me when I am dead? Take it. And I was like, no, that makes a lot more sense. But then my next question was, what are these garments and why are they so special? Why did he take the time to steal them? And then on the run, bleeding out, takes the time to hide them before he goes to get life-saving care. And it ties into what I just spoke about earlier. This was the supernatural garments from the Garden of God, Adam's coverings, which was the symbol of kingship and priesthood. This, I found out through all the extra biblical writings, this is the birthright. This is what the seed war is all over. This is basically the crown. So people that's into Game of Thrones, man, Game of Thrones ain't got nothing on the Bible. That's the story of the Bible. And what I thought was really cool, because like I said, I'm 40-year-old. Thought I knew the Bible really well up until probably around 2012. And just seen a whole new text. And these extra biblical books and legends, Lewis Ginsburg, Legends of the Jews, is a great 6-book series that I highly suggest anybody that's into this stuff check those out. But in there, it traces the passing down of these garments and this birthright. And I'm a Southern man, so the only kind of context I got is like your grandpa's old rifle. It's a family heirloom. It gets passed to the eldest son on down the line. It's an important family heirloom. That's what these garments were. And it traces them. It says that Adam had them, Enoch had them, Methuselah had them, Noah ends up with them and takes them over the flood. And it says that in Ham's going out, Ham steals the garments. And then Ham gives them to Cush. It says Cush in his old age had Nimrod and give it to Nimrod. And when it said when Nimrod turned 20 years old, he put on the garments. And then he became a Gibborim. And once again, here's another story that made absolutely no sense to me, was the uncovering of Noah's nakedness. The story that I was taught was basically Ham comes in and Noah is pissed drunk and naked, laying in the floor, and that he happens to see him, or maybe even makes a a remark about him or something, making fun of him. Then he wakes up and his genealogy's cursed. And I was like, man, that's harsh. You know, if I was at school all day and I get off the bus and my dad's pissed drunk laying on the floor naked, that ain't my fault. That's his fault. And like I mentioned earlier with the garden, the curses always correlate to the crime. And it's usually the opposite of what the person's trying to achieve. So if we look at that story, it says that Ham uncovered his father's nakedness. Well, when you go to Leviticus 17, you know, if you let Scripture interpret Scripture, it says there, to sleep with thy father's wife is to uncover thy father's nakedness. It is your father's nakedness. And I found out that this is an act of rebellion in the ancient world. We see it time and time again in the Bible. Absalom, David's son, when he runs David out of the kingdom and tries to usurp the throne, the first thing he does is he pitches a tent on top of David's house, and he goes into all of David's concubines in the sight of all of Israel. Reuben does the same thing. When he's trying to usurp his dominance, he sleeps with all his father's concubines as an act of rebellion to take over the household. So this was an act of rebellion. So Ham slept with his mother. And then when he goes outside, I think he tells his brothers, he's like, hey, Dad's a drunk. He's depressed. He's unfit to rule. I just did this deed. You guys go do it too. And he can't take on all three of us. You know, the world is ours. We'll divide it amongst ourselves. It's our time to rule. And it says that they, you know, refuse the rebellion. But in that story, it says they take a garment, place upon their shoulders, and walk backwards and cover their father's nakedness. And I was like, is that the garments from the Garden of God? And then when you get to looking at the original Hebrew, it don't say a garment. It says they took the garment, placed it on their shoulders, walked backwards and covered their father's nakedness. So I was like, okay, even theologically, this makes sense. He was trying to take the crown, so they took the symbol of priesthood and kingship and placed it back upon their father. And it also made a whole lot more sense when the cursing comes, because he curses Canaan, not Ham. And it's like, well, if you're reading this chronologically, Canaan's not even born yet. So why is he cursing Canaan? Because it says that when he recovered from his wine, you know, it doesn't give you a time. We assume it's a day. I think it was probably several months down the road once he drunk all the grapes dry. There was no more to drink, so he come off the wagon, so to speak. And when he did, he noticed a baby bump that his wife was rocking, and it wasn't his, and that they were going to name it Canaan. And he heard about the rebellion. So he said, cursed be Canaan. He said, a servant to thy brother Shem and Japheth he shall be. And I was like, oh man, that's the only way he could be Shem and Japheth's brother is if, yeah, they got the same mother, bro.
Doc, people are really fascinated by this. You've got tons of questions coming in. I'll stop hogging you and start to put some of these questions forward to you. Jan wants to know, do blood groups have relevance?
Honestly, I don't know, but I've heard a lot of people talk about like the RH negatives and things like that. But honestly, I really don't know. But there's two groups with this serpent seed, and I guess I want to tell you where mine is, where my flag is. There's some people that thinks that there's two seed lines, and one is irredeemable, and they're destined and born to go to hell. They're unredeemable. I don't take that stance. I take the stance of we're basically, if you go back far enough, we're all mutts. I mean, we all got some muddy genealogies. We probably got all a little touch of, you know, Nephilim or something in us. But I think at the cross, he shed his blood for all. And Paul tells you, you know, to preach the gospel unto all creatures, all of creation. So I think that yes, the blood can set you up for failure and for damnation, but I think we all have a free will choice. So I just wanted to say that because there are a lot of people that hold to the serpent seed theory that use it for, what am I looking for? Mm, ulterior motives, for racist motives, because there's been plenty of people like the Ku Klux Klan. They adopted this. I do not take that standpoint.
All right. So A Baker, why do you think ESAU as that Esau?
Yeah,
Why did he hate his birthright, please?
yeah, and that's the thing is, that's what I was always taught. I was always taught that he just hated his birthright and he was just so eager to give it away, and that he was a man of the flesh. You know, he didn't think of the long game. He just thought of the now. So whatever would please his eyes or flesh of the now, that's what he was going to go for. But I think he didn't despise it, because when you look at that story, he was bleeding out, dying, and desperate. So he told his brother whatever he wanted to hear so he could get that life saving care, I believe. And I think we see that as a matter of fact, because later when Isaac goes to bless them, because this is basically like a verbal agreement. If I tell you, Sean, I'm like, hey, we're good friends. I want you to have my 2010 Dodge Challenger. That's a verbal agreement. When I die, you could go up to my family and be like, hey, Justin told me I could have his car. And they'll be like, well, we just got back from the lawyer's office. Here's the will signed, and it ain't going to you. So I looked at Isaac's deathbed blessing as kind of like the lawyer's office, getting that stamp of approval. It's final. And he calls in Esau to give him his blessing and the birthright. And if he intended on honoring his agreement, that would have been the perfect time to say, hey, Father, I appreciate it, but I traded it to my younger brother. You need to bless him. But he doesn't do that. He's like, okay, yep, I'll go out and get you prepare you some food, and I'll come back and you can bless me. So I think that shows that he didn't despise it. He wanted it. And when he comes back and realizes that the fix is in, because if we pay attention, what happens in that story, Rebecca hears the conversation, tells Jacob to go out and kill what? A goat, and bring the meat to her, and she would prepare a delicious meal, and that they would wrap him in this goat's fur, and he would pretend to be Esau and steal the birthright and blessing. So where Esau's talked about being this hairy, that's not poetic language. I mean, he was literally that hairy. But the garments are there too, because it's like the cherry on top. A lot of people miss it. Before she sends Jacob in, it says that she goes to Esau's tent and takes his quote unquote special garments. So I think she took those garments from the Garden of God and placed it on Jacob. And when he walked in, deceived him. After everything was done, Esau comes back. He's mad. He screams out in anger, and he threatens to kill Jacob for stealing his birthright. And Jacob ends up having to leave and hide out in the land of Haran for many years till his brother's wrath subsided. So I don't think he despised it at all. I mean, he was fighting like hell to keep it, and was even willing to kill his brother to try to get it back.
So is this why the royal families are so worshipped and called blue bloods and think they're so special? Does it relate to these bloodlines, the history of these bloodlines?
Yes. I think the whole blue bloods is going back to this dragon court, or in the biblical lens, this serpent seed. And they were the elder brother. Dominion and the right to rule was supposed to have been theirs, but they were quote unquote screwed out of their birthright. And so you see this with Jacob and Esau. You see it with Cain and Abel. You even see it with Abraham. When Abraham, him and Sarah can't have a child, well, Sarah's freaked out thinking that she's going to be replaced by a younger woman. So she takes Hagar and gives Hagar to Abraham and says, sleep with her, have a lineage with her. And he does, and he has Ishmael. Ishmael was the oldest son. He was supposed to get the birthright and the inheritance. But what happens? Rebecca miraculously gets pregnant, and the younger brother gets the birthright. So, I mean, I think that we just see this time and time again. Even the parable of the prodigal son. This is the same story. In that story, what happens? You have an older son that is always there by the father's side, but the younger son wants his birthright and inheritance now. So he gets it and he goes off and he squanders it away. That's us, folks, the younger brother. And then what happens? The younger brother comes back and begs for forgiveness and to be taken back into the home, into the family. But the father's waiting by the gate with open arms. And it says they put a signet ring of authority and a cloak of authority back on the younger brother and restores him back to his position. Well, what happens? The elder brother's pissed. He pulls his father aside and he said, basically, I've been here the whole time, Father. I've never left you. I've never soiled our family name. I've not squandered my inheritance. I've been the good child. But you throw this big party for this joke of a son. Where's my party? Where's my celebration and love feast that you've thrown for him? I've been here the whole time. I think that's once again another microcosm of the overall story of the Bible and of God's family, the elder brother, the angelic race, and the younger brother, humanity.
So with Bohemian Grove, then you've got all these world leaders getting together to do this mock blood sacrifice. How does that tie into this?
I think that these type of groups and things like that are kind of like the Freemasons. I tell people, do I think every person that's a part of the Freemasonry is a Luciferian occult member that worships Satan? No. I think that for the most part, they're in it for just a good old boys club to get away from the wife, have some drinks, and you know, have a club and a hobby and camaraderie. But the higher ups you go, those are the ones like Albert Pike talks about in his book, Morals and Dogma, that once they get to the 32nd, 33rd degree, that's when it's revealed to them that the grand architect is Lucifer, the light bearer. So, uh, and I kind of use this analogy, I've used it before, it kind of shows my age, but the original Ninja Turtles, you remember when they're in New York and the Foot Clan starts this little group for all the wild teenagers to come to and play video games, and they have this big warehouse. Well, that warehouse is full of thousands of kids. They go there, smoke and party and play video games. They know nothing about the Foot Clan, even though the Foot Clan runs it. But there's a select few that they see promise in, that they walk up to discreetly and say, hey, come back here at the back room with us. We're going to show you what we really do. I think that's the same thing. And I think it's so muddy. And I'm not going to pretend to say that I know everything, but my opinion is that you have these groups. Some are just kind of like side of hand, like look over here at this while we are over here doing this, deception type things. Or there are groups where they pretend to bring in people and make them feel important and use them as like foot soldiers and cronies. But the higher ups that are never seen at these things are the ones behind the scenes pulling the strings, kind of like the Ezekiel 28 king of Tyre and the Pharaoh of Egypt, how there's this entity in the ear of the world leader pulling the strings and nudging them to do their bidding. I think that's the same thing we see today.
All right. So the next question then is from Bonnie. Who do you know and thoughts about Astana, also called the City of the Fallen Angels?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not even. You're also getting asked about Lilith.
Oh, Lilith. See, I think with Lilith is the Jewish legends and ways of basically splitting off of Eve into two personalities, basically. And this dragon court, this dragon lineage, takes a lot of biblical history and a lot of world history and kind of morph them and spin them into each other. And I'm of the opinion that, like the Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, they to like basically preserve the innocence of Eve, like split her into two personalities and Lilith is the one that gets the blame for being the evil one and for propagating the serpent seed. And so, from people that I've talked to and read, I think that sounds feasible to me because she was one of the original patriarchs. And if this serpent seed thing is true, and I think they believed it, whether it's true or not, they believed it. Uh, this was a way of them preserving the innocence of one of the patriarchs.
Gotcha. All right, you've got a question from Agent Orange. Do you have any links that head towards the ancient Americas bloodline?
Well, I take the position of L.A. Marzulli, and I try to give credit where credit is due. I've never really had an original idea in my life, but I love to read, and I love to get different perspectives on subjects and kind of compile the pieces together and try to form an overall opinion. But L.A. Marzulli, he's got a pretty good theory that he has worked out with Fritz Zimmerman that I kind of hold to. And they basically say that when you get Joshua and Caleb coming into the Holy Land and cleansing the Holy Land, this is where a lot of people want to say, well, your God's a genocidal God. He called for the devastation of entire people groups, mass genocide. Well, when you read into that, all the clans that he tells them to do that to devout to destruction, were known Nephilim giant clans. He was trying to purge the land of this hybrid race. And he says that he believes that during this conquest, the smart ones anyway, seen how they just rolled through AI like it wasn't nothing. They got to Jericho and then just marched around the city and collapsed the walls without even swinging the first sword. I think the smart ones were like, oh, hell nah, we're out of here. We ain't looking to die. So they started migrating north. And then you had this certain group that was later known as the Phoenicians. They were known seafaring people. I think that they loaded up their boats and they sailed to the Americas. And during this time frame, they speculate that the waters, were like 200 foot higher. And there was a direct path, like from around New England, straight into the Great Lakes area. And here at this Great Lakes area, around the Island Royale, is the one of the largest and most purest copper mines in the world. And this copper mine, scientists have, guesstimated of the removal of the copper to be like hundreds of thousands of tons of copper missing from this place. And that copper tests at 98.8% purity. It's the purest copper in the world, so they can pinpoint it. And they find that copper all over the world. So I think these giants come to North America, went into the Great Lakes, mined all this copper, and they were seafaring people going back and forth, fueling the Bronze Age, I believe. And that's why we find this 98.8% pure copper in China, Europe, South America, Africa, everywhere. It's everywhere because it was from these Nephilim giant tribes that escaped during the Great Diaspora. And then from there, they took the Ohio River Valley straight down and got deeper into North America. And I think that's why we see all these mounds in North America. You have Serpent Mound, you have Cahokia, Enon, Miamisburg, just all these huge, Newark, these huge megalithic earthworks. And it's all concentrated in this Ohio River Valley, I think, because that's where they traveled up and down through the North American continent.
So the next question then is from A. Baker. How does the Ark of the Covenant play into this?
The Ark of the Covenant. I think that the Ark was basically not something that they were like fighting over as much. I think that was basically the covenant symbol given to God's chosen people that held the tablets and held the staff or the rod of Moses. But we do see another supercharged relic, whether it's legend, lore, fact or fiction, but the Holy Grail. And we see, the occult symbolism with that, and how the occult chased after that. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis went off looking for these relics because they believed them to be powerful, supercharged relics. And I think they were after this big time. And that's why you have the Knights of the Round Table, and you have all these legends and lore. King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, looking for the Holy Grail, Percival, all that stuff in there about them having these Fisher Kings, these divine right to rule people guarding, this supernaturally charged relic. And I think that is a pretty pivotal piece to the puzzle. And I love how Graham Hancock in his book, the Sign and the Seal, talked about how the Nabra, or forgive me because I'm a Southern man, I can barely speak English, so these big words I have trouble with, but the Nabra Hagast, which was basically the Ethiopian legends, how they line up perfectly parallel, just different names, with the story of Percival, and how the Nabra Nagast says that Sheba, when she came up to see King Solomon, that they got together, and she left and was pregnant and didn't realize it until after she got back. And according to their legends, she gives birth to Menelik the first, and this is a righteous seed line from Solomon. And Percival tells a story about a white European aristocrat comes down to Ethiopia, finds a black woman, falls in love with her. They have a child. I think his name was Frenitz or something like that in the Percival story. But all these things line up perfectly with these Ethiopian legends. And Graham Hancock traces that and thinks that it's like basically a hidden treasure map uh, for the Ark of the Covenant. And he thinks that uh, the Ark of the Covenant, I'm sorry, that the Holy Grail was code for the Ark of the Covenant, and that it wound up in Ethiopia. And that's the last time that they had any kind of traces of it, because this Menelik, supposedly, according to the legends, went to see Solomon when he was an adult and said, "Hey, you're my dad," basically. And he takes him in, but then Menelik steals the ark and smuggles it down into Ethiopia. So if there is any kind of like supernatural relic in this seed war, I think it would be this Holy Grail.
You got some quite esoteric questions coming in, but I'll keep going with them. All right, so Professor Hamamoto, can you comment on current bloodline merging between the Han Chinese, Ku Jin, and the Ashkenazi Jews, Larry Summers?
Yeah, that honestly, guys, I've not got that deep into it. I just finished this book in January and released it, and so I'm just basically got my toes dipped into the deep end of this pool, and this is a deep pool. But what I found so far is very compelling, and I'm starting to dig down through it. But I think we see hints of it with even the mythology. When you go to China, you have, I can't remember what they're called now, but these serpent people all depicted, and these dragons. And then you go into India, these, I can't remember the name, but it starts with an N, but there's the serpent people. You just have all these esoteric stories throughout the world of this serpent lineage and these serpent gods. I think that's echoing all back to this thing that we're talking about.
So does this tie into David Icke's theories then of reptilians and shapeshifters and other royal bloodline is reptilian?
Yeah, I think so, because whether they're like true physical reptilian, like green scales and stuff, I don't know, or if it's they have this bloodline in them that originates to a serpentine type entity, because the Nakash, according to which scriptures you read and stuff, but he's compared to a serpentine angel, a dragon angel, and they called him an anointed guardian cherub in the Masoretics. But when you get into the Septuagint and stuff, it talks about he was a seraphim, a fiery one, and that's another thing. You go down into the Egyptians, the Africans, up in your neck of the woods too, the Druids, they all talk about these shining ones.
All right, well, viewers, thank you for the questions that are coming in. We're fast approaching 2,000 watching live across all the platforms. And CJ's wondering, did the giants mate with earthly women?
Yeah. According to some of the writings and stuff, they did. And the ones that had successful births almost died in the birthing process. But they were larger than normal, I believe. But I don't think that they come out just so huge that they couldn't, even deliver them. But I think that's kind of like maybe they just had like really rapid growth and grew to this height, after the fact. But uh, I don't know how
So
much.
was it the size of the babies then that caused some of the mothers to die at birth?
Yeah, that was the word or the legends of it. And it's like saying, I don't know how much time that you got left, but I definitely wanted to kind of show this off and talk about this a little bit because I
We got
think
as much time as you want, Doc. Keep going.
because I think this ties into it too. And this was another one of my fascinations, man. Giants and these elongated skulls.
Yes,
And
please.
yeah, for those that's not familiar, and this is from Paracas. This is a Paracas skull, but this is a juvenile. This is not a full-grown adult male. And you have this
Oh,
elongated skull, in which I got a bunch of signatures on it. I've had all my fringy friends like Timothy Alberino, Tony Merkel, and Giorgio sign it. Anytime I go to a conference, I take it with me and have people sign it. But modern day, anthropologists and archaeologists all want to say that this is from head binding. And I'm not going to argue with them that some were head binding, but I don't think all were. And when you are a child, I think it's they start once they become a year old or 2 years old, they wrap or bind or board their head and force it to grow out elongated like this. So you can imagine the pain, the headaches, the discomfort that you would be putting yourself and your children through to achieve this aesthetic look. And I'm a firm believer in whys. Okay, they did this. Well, why did they do this? Because they were emulating something else that they seen. And I know you're from Europe, but here in the United States, the mullet is a big thing, and it's making a comeback. And it started a few years ago, and one of the main proponents was this guy named Morgan Wallen, this country music artist that showed up rocking the mullet. Then everybody else started imitating him and trying to copy his look because he was an important icon, in American culture. And I think that's what we have here. There was somebody or a group of people that had this elongated head that was an important icon in their culture, and they wanted to emulate and look like them. And when we look through the ones that are known from head binding, none of the features of the skull besides the elongated portion change. They still have their Sadrasutra lines. The brain case volume has not increased. The eye orbits are the same. I mean, everything, as far as a normal human skull is exactly the same. It's been elongated because it's been stretched and compressed. Well, some of these that they found, including this one, if you look, there's no Sadrasutra line. And for those that's not familiar, you can Google search and look. It's basically a peace sign crack that's on your skull, and it separates these different skull caps. Well, all the ones they find from head binding, they still have their Sadrasutra lines. But there's a large handful that they find, like this guy, that has no sadrasutra line. So we know by the large amounts of proven elongated skulls from head binding that doesn't erase that sadrasutra line. So that's a really distinct factor in some of these. Another thing is if you look at the eye orbits, they're about 25 to 30% larger than a normal skull. When L.A. Marzulli and his group of anthropologists and scientists and archaeologists went down there and studied these things, they did DNA samples on these things, measured every little thing, brought optometrists with them. They were really thorough. But the optometrist examining these eye orbits, he says that they were 25 to 30% larger. He said, so we can assume safely that the pupillaries were 25 to 30% larger also. He said, and the distance between the eyes right here, he said, is a lot more narrow than a normal skull. He said, all the elongated ones we find, it doesn't increase the eye sockets or any of that stuff. It doesn't decrease the width between them. So this is a genetic thing. He said, so I think, he said that these hybrid beings had night vision like a predatory animal, like an owl, because how the eyes are set up. And it kind of goes with the legends around the world. All of these Nephilim or giants, they were famed to be cave dwellers. So it kind of makes sense if they had night vision, because they were cave dwellers. They were in the dark constantly. And they drilled a hole in the top of one of these and filled it with rice to measure the brain case volume. Well, in a handful of these, the same things, the ones with the large eye sockets and with no sadrasutra line, those guys had like a 15% larger brain case volume. And then if you go to underneath, this hole is where the spine connects to the skull. If you Google search, I think they call it the foramen magnum, but if you look, all skulls mount right here in the center for balance. All the ones they find that they say is from headboarding still have this mount right here in the center. But these guys, they're all the way at the back because to help it balance. If that thing was in the center, it would just be looking up at the sky all the time. So by mounting it further back, it better balances this elongated head. So all the ones that they find from head binding, it doesn't change the anchor point of the skull. So once again, it shows you that this was genetic. It was built in the DNA. And there's even been stories from Spanish explorers and things in their journals that they found mummies in caves down in Peru that still had unborn infants in the womb with elongated heads. They got drawings of them and multiple recordings of them. But of course, like the Smithsonian here in the United States, some people got their hands on them and they just mysteriously disappeared. And even the Peruvian legends go right along with these because Viracocha, that was one of their main gods, the creator god. In their legends, it says that Viracocha was pale-skinned, elongated head, long beard. These are all contradictory aesthetics from the Peruvian people. The Peruvian people were shorter. They didn't have elongated heads. They had dark skin, and they can't grow beards that well. So this, screams, alien or foreigner of the land. But it says that Viracocha pulls up on this, on serpents, a bed of serpents without paddles. And that he has a group of people, if you want to call them disciples, and they call them the Viracochan. And that they show up and they civilize Peru. He gives them the 7 sacred sciences, teaches them how to do math, to study the map the stars, architecture, all of these things. And the legends tell all the different towns that they go through. And they have mapped this, and they call it the path of Viracocha. And without fail, every single town that he stopped at, they find megalithic architecture and elongated skulls without fail. And when he leaves, he sails off, him and his Veracocha, and he says that he would return when they most needed him, so to be watching for him, and he would arrive just the way he came the first time. So he leaves, and what happens? The Spanish pull up. What are they on? They're on ships without paddles because they got sails. They get off the boat. They're pale skinned. They're tall. They got long, thick beards. And they're wearing this metal armor, glistening, glowing in the sun, looking like they're God Veracocha from their legends. So they, threw gold and silver at him and give him everything he wanted and worshiped him like a god because they thought he was Veracocha. And that's how he, took over South America so easily. He went along with it. And then after a certain amount of time, once they started figuring out he was no god, it was too late. He was done so far deep into South America that they couldn't fight him off anymore. But the Spaniards in their journals said that they seen a group of people different. That there was a group of people that had pale skin, beards, and elongated skulls.